Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Kicking It Classic with JCD. As always, I am your host, John JCD DeMaselli. As always, Kicking It Classic with JCD is part of the PWP Nation Network. You can check out PWP Nation on Twitter at PWP Nation. You can check out the show on Twitter at KITCWJCD. You can also follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Kicking It Classic with JCD. And you could email the show, kickingitclassicwithjcd at yahoo.com. This episode, and I feel like we're just going rapid, and we need to get caught up, deals on some of the lesser-known facts about the drama involving the Bash at the Beach 2000 title controversy in WCW. Now, the event is obviously known for, the Hulk Hogan, Jeff Jarrett fiasco with Jarrett laying down, allowing Hogan to pin him, and Hogan walking off with the belt. We all know about the promo Vince Russo cuts about how I came all back for all the guys in MIA. I came back for the Jeff Jarretts, the Booker T's. But you know who I didn't come back for? That goddamn politician Hulk Hogan. We know about that. We know that the show ends with Booker T and Jeff Jarrett in probably, if not the one of the top two matches for WCW in 2000. Now, granted, the bar was set really low, but the first Jarrett-Booker match that night was amazing. But regardless of all that, there's a lot of little things that still get lost in the shuffle when people discuss this, and I'm going to take a few minutes. This shouldn't be a long episode by any means. I don't think it will be. If it does turn into that, it will, but I'm not expecting it to be. That went on that really tie this event together. Now, as usual, for the logistics of the show, the event was held on January 9, 2000 at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida, with an attendance of 6,572. And man, that should tell you where this company was headed. Now, as far as the show itself, the show is not terrible. However, again, the controversy is what hangs over this. So like I stated in the opening, we all know the basics about what happened. Now, how did we get here? That's a good question. Hulk Hogan won a number one contenders match at the Great American Bash pay-per-view and was clearly lined up for the shot with Jarrett, which is okay. That's cool. It's kind of, WCW, still hanging on to the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood, although it wasn't as solid and as concrete as it was in the months prior. It still was kind of WCW in its heyday with Hogan, the NWO stuff, facing the current face of WCW and the new regime, Jeff Jarrett, for the title. Okay, Hogan Jarrett had really, never really been done in any type of major form prior. So, okay, this is different. It's going to headline Bash at the Beach. Okay, they were playing up on the history of the NWO debuting that, in that same building, right around that same, time frame. I think it was just a couple of days off, and this was your title match. Along the way, Hogan on Nitro, on the build to this match on Nitro, was getting destroyed by Goldberg, who was heel and aligned with Bischoff Russo. So again, okay, maybe the feud coming out of this will be Hogan-Goldberg, because Goldberg was going to face Kevin Nash in a match that was going to involve Scott Hall's contract. Again, okay, Hall was legitimately gone from the company, so, this was just their way of, officially, firmly writing him off, which, would give Goldberg that win to position himself as a potential number one contender for the title. Okay, makes total sense. Goldberg's destroying Hogan in the build. I think 2 weeks before the match, Goldberg jackhammers Hogan through a table. So there you go. There's your setup right there. So WCW had firm plans in place. Now, Vince Russo, in, I guess you gotta say, typical Vince Russo booking, they had a match on the show that was going to be Kanyon versus Booker T, okay? And I'm not trying to jump across the board, but we're gonna kind of have to go back and forth just to pull everything together. Kanyon beats Booker on that show, and I want to say it was clean. So you've got that, and that's important to what Vince Russo has stated and claimed in the 20 and a half years since. Vince Russo has claimed he had a meeting with several members of WCW executives and creative. And he said his plan was to come out of Bash at the Beach with Booker as champion. Now, how does that happen? God only knows. There's been speculation that Hogan was going to beat Jarrett, and then Hogan was going to cut almost like a heel-turning promo to which Booker was going to come out, challenge Hogan, and beat Hogan for the title. No offense, as cool of a moment as that could have been, I don't see where WCW was at the time and where it was going, how that would have worked. It would have probably made Booker a heel. Hogan was still over enough as a face at that time. I mean, he hadn't even turned face a year yet. He had turned face in August of '99, so he was just hitting just under a year of his face turn. I mean, Hogan could do it, but I don't think the WCW crowd would have bought into it, especially, when an hour earlier, Booker's eating a Kanyon cutter and losing to Kanyon pretty clean. But that's what Russo claims. Russo also claims, and this, I can't see this, that Hogan was on board until 48 hours before the show. And then Hogan, in, excuse me, I guess you could say typical Hogan fashion, decides, nah, brother, this doesn't work for me. The reason why I call bullshit on that is I can't see Hogan agreeing to that at all. I just can't. Listen, Hogan's pulled a lot of shit creatively in his career, but I just can't picture Hogan on Monday saying, okay, brother, yeah, this works. All right, we'll do this. And then on Friday turning around and saying, no, bro, this doesn't work for me. I could see the Friday thing happening. I don't see the Monday part of it happening. That's Vince Russo's side of it. Jeff Jarrett has claimed on his old King of the Mountain DVD from TNA that it was just a total clusterfuck situation, basically. Jarrett actually, he pretty much blames management from the top down that they should have had a clamp on this and under control from the start, which makes me believe that a more realistic scenario is Russo couldn't get Hogan to agree to a finish and then ultimately decided this was the way to go. That seems to be more what I knowing the people involved, Russo and Hogan, I could see that being the case. Russo may have had this idea, but I will bet you $50 to $1 Hogan never agreed to it, even for a minute. And then once Russo realized he couldn't get Hogan on board with his way of thinking, that's when he just told, because you could tell when that match happens, Jarrett comes out, Hogan comes out, then Russo comes out, and Jarrett is nowhere. When Hogan comes out, Jarrett is nowhere near the ring. He's think he's outside, but he's also like far away. Like, I think he's almost up the aisleway. And then Jarrett just kind of gets in. Hogan's working. Like, I really see, this is why I kind of believe, to a degree, I believe Hogan here, that Hogan thought they had an understanding, because Hogan goes out and he's in full Hogan gimmick. He's working the crowd. He's working Jarrett. Come on, get in the ring, all that stuff. And then Jarrett just gets in the ring and lays down. And you could tell, listen, you could fake a lot of emotions, but you could also tell when an emotion is real. And Hogan legitimately has this look of shock on his face, like, what the fuck is this? And Jarrett lays down and Russo's there. Russo's out. He's yelling at Hogan, pin him, whatever. And Hogan does, and then Hogan cuts his promo, asking Russo, is this your call? Is this your deal? No wonder why this company's in the shape that it's in, because of bullshit like this, and leaves with the belt. Well, let me rephrase that. Leaves with a belt. Russo comes out shortly after and cuts the Russo promo. If I could find the whole promo without commentary attached to it, I'll post it on the website. But it's basically he's playing... See, this is the thing. This is why Russo's story to a degree doesn't make sense, because he even admits he's playing... I think his exact words were, I'm playing politics. So I get to the arena and I'm playing politics all day with Hulk Hogan. So again, that tells me you don't have a plan that you thought you were in place with. You guys were going back and forth one way or another. So Hogan, and Hogan's actually shown backstage walking out. They were doing a cut to something else, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you see Hogan leave. I think he's got his son with him, and Hogan leaves as they're following whatever it is they're following backstage. I think it was the Vampiro Demon, like, all around the world match that they had, that graveyard match. And I think what happened was they were brawling in the back, and you see Hogan walk by like he's leaving the arena with his son and the title. I don't even think Hogan was dressed, if I remember right. And that's it. Hogan's gone. That's when Russo states you'll never see him, in this company again. And true to his word, Hogan never appeared for WCW again. So now, where do we go from here? We obviously have Russo announces Booker Jarrett for the main event, and he pulls out the old Ric Flair version of the big gold belt, the one everyone talks about with the big dent in the middle. And that's going to be the WCW title. And Jarrett and Booker are going to face off for it in the main event. They do, and Booker wins the title. So, if you go by Russo still got his way. As roundabout and as random as it was, Russo got his way and he got his guy. Hogan's gone from the company. Now, this is 2000. The internet was semi what it is today. It's nowhere. It was nowhere 100% where it was, but it was around. You had websites, you had news sites, you still had the newsletters. The hotlines were more of a thing of the past, but you had sources, although limited, with information. So now people are wondering, this is a shoot. Hogan's going to come back, and they're going to do this big Hogan-Booker feud over who's the real champion. Comes out now. WCW used to have an audio show on their website, and it would go on after Nitro and after a pay-per-view. And Russo was clear as day that this was not, a work. This is not leading to an angle. And Hogan's not coming back to the company. That's it. He's done. As long as Russo's there, that's it. So now and Russo basically publicly fires Hogan on I think it was called WCW Live or something. So you've got that. Then you've got news that Okay, well, if Russo fired Hogan, and this was the era where there wasn't really non-compete clauses, unless you were Bret Hart, you didn't have 90 days back then. Your contract was up, you left. You got let go, you left. In this case, you got fired on an audio show. You were free to do what you want. There was, and I guess maybe Hogan suing Russo and WCW, is probably the only reason why this didn't happen. There was a rumor, and I could see this from all parties involved because of the mutual hate for WCW at that point. There was a rumor that Nick Hogan, Hulk's son at the time, was going to show up on Raw unannounced and hand Vince on Raw the big gold belt. And it would lead to Hogan coming back to the company. That obviously never happened. I can only imagine with Vince buying WCW a few months later, I can't imagine what that would have done, with that. But that moment would have been surreal. So Hogan sues WCW. They settle. And now there's one other side to this. And that's Eric Bischoff. Because it was said that Bischoff left with Hogan that night. That Bischoff was done working with Russo at that point. And that was it. Bischoff did leave with Hogan that night. And there were two camps. There was the Russo camp that wanted to do the Booker plan. And there was the Bischoff camp that was like, no, let's make this work with Jeff and Hogan. It just shows how bad things were that Bischoff left the company after that until he tried to purchase it months later. As far as Booker, he would have an okay reign. Of course, it had to be interrupted by a Kevin Nash, title swap, because why wouldn't it at the time? And for the most part, Booker losing to Scott Steiner later on down the road made more sense. And of course, Booker would regain the title, I'm going to say prematurely, on the final Nitro. But, Booker's run was okay. At that point, I think it's more fair to say that WCW was just so far gone at that point that it wouldn't have mattered who had the title. The company was never going to rebound. I've seen some people say that Booker was was one of the final nails in the coffin as champion. I don't see that. I just think, like I said, I think the company was just so far gone that you could have had anybody in there and it just wouldn't have worked. WCW was just so far gone at that point, and it's really unfair to the people that look at Booker's title run at the time that it came and say, oh yeah, that didn't do any business whatsoever. That's bullshit, and that's really unfair to Booker, who doesn't deserve that at all. That's going to wrap up this episode. Our next episode is another one that I'm looking forward to doing for all the amazing reasons that I actually lived through it as it happened. And I'm talking about 1996, 1997, the loose cannon Brian Pillman. Hey, listen, I was a Flying Brian fan just as much as the next guy, but it's the loose cannon stuff that really set Pillman's career off, and our next episode is going to be looking at that. So again, on behalf of Kicking It Classic with JCD, I am your host, John JCD DiMaselli. Thanks for listening.